Hello my little Lunas, you can call me Lovegood and I hope you enjoy this video. Here are just a few things before we get started. Today I'm presenting you with Chapter 9 of Ghostly Bonds by KittyKqt on AO3, titled Chapter 9. But anyways, thank you for tuning in to listen to me, but that's enough of my rambles and jambles and let's get right into the fic. This is the summary. Summary. Conversation between Nezu, the trio, and Izuku. TW. Mentions of Inko's attempt. Author's notes. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Has someone told his mom? Eraserhead asked, the picture of Izuku in his hands. It crumpled more as his hands tightened, eyes cast down to the floor. Izuku had really screwed this up. He sat cross-legged mid-air, watching the interaction unfold, cursing his stupidity. We don't know for certain. We shouldn't rush to any conclusions, Present Mike countered, bouncing his leg. His voice cracked like a child's, a sign he was nervous. The detective shook his head, running his hands through his hair. No, it's him. He took a deep breath, releasing it slowly. I saw him, in front of me, months ago. Izuku blinked in surprise, remembering the incident. He had just thought he was imagining the detective's stare at that point. Why didn't you tell me? Eraserhead asked, practically tearing the paper in half. The detective sighed, standing up and pacing a small vicinity. I didn't think it was him. I thought I was just seeing things. Inko was almost dead. She was dead. I don't know. It didn't seem real. I didn't think... Nezu cut him off, holding a paw in the air. Just tell us the story. We need to get to the bottom of this. The detective nodded, rubbing at the back of his neck and stopping pacing. Well, it wasn't long after he died. Committed. Eraserhead sighed, setting the paper down, finally. I was stopping by to talk to Inko about something. I can't remember what it was, but she didn't answer, so I went to leave. Present Mike opened his mouth to speak, but Midnight stopped him with a hand on his leg. He nodded, shutting his mouth. But something stopped me, like a hand. And I could have sworn I heard a child's voice. He looked up, looking to Eraserhead slowly. Izuku's voice. He nodded, and the detective continued. He told me to help Inko, and I don't know. I just kind of listened. The door was locked, but I heard it click and it was open. He took a deep breath, rubbing at his eyes even though he wasn't crying. She wasn't responding. She had tried to kill herself. Midnight nodded, rubbing at her hands as if they were cold. I was looking for something to help after I called for an ambulance, and then there was a sound, like glass shattering. It was so loud. I turned and there he was, just staring at Inko, his hands lit up a bright green on his mom's face. She took a breath, and he turned to me, this heartbreaking smile on his bloody face, waving slightly, and then he was just gone. I couldn't think at the time as I tried to get Inko to the hospital. He sat back down, leaning forward in the seat. It was him. I know it was. The silence that passed was heavy, and Izuku felt suffocated by it as he scanned each of the heroes' faces. He had caused that. Did you tell her? Midnight asked calmly, her soft voice filling the room. Did you tell his mom? The detective sobbed slightly, shaking his head. I couldn't. Things happened so fast. She got better, moved in. It's all moving so fast. You need to tell her, Midnight said roughly, tightening her grip on her hands. No, his mom couldn't know. She'd gotten better. They couldn't tell her. Eraserhead sighed, nodding his head. She's right. Midoriya has a right to know her son is still here. Izuku could not let them tell her. It would break her heart. All her healing wounds would be for nothing. He reached over and touched the light switch. Pushing the energy into his fingers and flicking it off quickly. Shit, Eraserhead loudly, as Izuku flicked the light back on, trying to stop himself from crying. It didn't help. Stupid damn tears were so useless. Izuku, you're here, aren't you? Izuku asked, and the detective scanned the room quickly, his eyes passing over every object. Izuku didn't touch the lights. He couldn't talk with them. Then they would know it was him for certain. We know it's you, Izuku, Nezu said, his gaze stuck on the light switch. It was only the way his whiskers twitched slightly that told Izuku he couldn't truly see him. Izuku sighed, flicking the light down once before turning them back on. It was over. They knew he was here, and he needed to make them promise. They couldn't tell her. "How do you know it's him?" the detective asked, standing up again. "It could just be faulty wiring, or maybe the power went out. You can't know." He started his pacing again before Izuku flicked the light on and off. "Shit," he muttered, sitting back down, running his hands through his hair. Izuku ruined everything. Now the detective was stressed and he couldn't even help. But they couldn't tell her. He flicked the lights off quickly in repetition, Eraserhead sighing. "We get it, problem child," he said softly, and Izuku paused, his hand still resting on the light switch. "It's polite to announce yourself." Izuku's anger grew as Eraserhead spoke to him like a child. He was not a child anymore, and they would listen to him. He sped across the room, pushing his energy into his hands and ripping the picture of himself in two. All eyes shot to his new position, staring at the ruined photo on the floor. "We have to tell her," Midnight said sternly, shaking her head. They weren't listening to him. He grabbed Eraserhead's cup, chucking it on the floor, hot coffee splashing everywhere. They all darted up, backing away from the table as Izuku glared at them. "No!" he screamed, but it fell on deaf ears as they looked at one another. "You can't tell her." The room was alight in a slight green light, almost like the second sight he had, as he stared at the heroes. They had promised to protect, but they wanted to hurt his mama. He heard them gasp as he glared at each of them, his hands shaking from anger. They couldn't. The detective stepped forward, his hands shaking slightly as he held them up. "Midoriya," he said gently, and Izuku blinked, staring at the man. He understood. He didn't want to hurt Mama. He would listen. "I know that you are hurting right now," he started, and Izuku scoffed. He couldn't feel pain. He wasn't hurting right now. He just had to make sure Mama didn't get hurt. "But it's for the best." His voice caught in his throat in the middle, and Izuku clenched his fists. He shot across the room to the light switch, flicking it on and off, trying to do anything. They needed to listen. They didn't understand. It would kill his mom. He had been selfish. She was just starting to get better. "No," he said again, taking his hand off the light switch. "What is it?" Eraserhead finally asked, but he didn't sit back down. His hands prepped as if he was going to use his capture weapon. Izuku rolled his eyes, trying to still his anger. It didn't do anything. He couldn't think. Izuku grabbed the paper from the table, putting all of his focus into it as he crumpled it between his hands and dropped it. "I won't let you tell her," he announced, though no one could hear him. "Then it's settled," Nezu said, clapping his hands together. Izuku turned to the principal, tipping his head. "We do not tell Mrs. Midoriya until Izuku's ready." Izuku blinked in surprise. "But," Midnight started, and Nezu held up a paw. "There's no reason to worry her," he said, and the detective slouched in on himself. "I do not know your relationship with Mrs. Midoriya, but you will not tell her," Nezu said, turning to stare at the detective. He opened his mouth to speak before looking down at the crumpled piece of paper and nodding slowly. "Good," Nezu chirped, grabbing his teacup. "Now that that's settled, I would like to officially speak with you, Midoriya Izuku." Izuku blinked in surprise, looking down at the mess he had made. Battered ceramic and coffee covered the floor, and the picture of him was ruined on the floor. None of the heroes had settled back down, and Izuku squeaked, tucking in on himself. He didn't mean to get so angry. "If any of you would like to leave, now would be the time," Nezu declared, grinning. "I would like to ask Midoriya here some questions." He looked over at the detective, who stood straighter under his gaze. "I'm sure it goes without saying that all events that occurred today stay with us 5. He paused, looking at the paper, chuckling slightly. 6, he corrected himself. The detective left quickly, running his hands over the light switch before leaving Izuku's sight. "This is a bad idea," Midnight said, following shortly behind. "Are you two coming?" she asked, looking over her shoulder. President Mike nodded slightly, watching Eraserhead. "I'll see you at home, shall?" he asked, and Eraserhead nodded, sitting on the edge of the couch. Midnight scoffed, and President Mike held a hand up, muttering something about closure. Izuku was fucked. Eraserhead and Nezu were both silent, staring at this stupid picture. Not moving at all. He could just leave. He could go see Karchan or someone else. Maybe Dark Shadow would keep him company. "Don't leave," Eraserhead said sternly, and Izuku glared at the hero. "Please." Izuku sighed, nodding slightly even though they couldn't see him. He flipped the light switch off and on, and Eraserhead sighed. "On to my questions, dear Midoriya," Nezu said, tapping his fingers on the table. "It's Class 1A a good placement for you? Eraserhead shot his head up, and Izuku froze, staring at the mammal. He laughed, setting the teacup down before it could spell. You passed the entrance exam, easily, with rescue points and most likely with combat points. That explained literally nothing. He's not a student here, Eraserhead said quietly, and Nezu hummed. One issue we can remedy when the time comes. He paused, tapping a finger on his chin. Think of him more like a secret intern under you. Izuku couldn't help but giggle slightly, shaking his head. The stupid rat really was stupid. Now that that's settled, Eraserhead frowned, but didn't speak. Can you hold a pencil as well as you can rip paper? Izuku hummed in thought before slowly shutting the lights off and on. He could try. Nezu clapped his paws together, scurrying down from the desk, grabbing a notepad and pencil, setting it where the coffee once sat. Let's try it, shall we? Izuku floated over, hesitantly picking up the pencil, using his energy to hold it still. The second it touched paper, it fell, and he cursed, watching it tumble away. His head swam as he tried to use his mom's quirk to bring it back, only floating it an inch in the air. Are you having difficulties? Nezu asked, and Izuku nodded before remembering to float over and hit the light switch. He didn't realize how much his head hurt and the black spots filled his vision. Until now. He had used too much energy in his stupid outburst. Nezu hummed, picking the pencil up from the floor and placing it on the desk. I see. Would you like to meet at a later time? Izuku hesitated before flicking the switch. He didn't want to do this at all, but they knew who he was, and if he didn't give them what they wanted, they were going to tell his mama. Very well, he nodded, readjusting the notepad slowly. I'll see you later, Mr. Aizawa. Eraserhead looked up, shocked, his mouth slightly open. It seems our guest needs a break, he explained, and Eraserhead scoffed. Izuku watched Eraserhead stand up, shaking his head in disbelief. He was so selfish. If he had just not done anything, Eraserhead wouldn't feel like this right now. Eraserhead stalked to the door, pausing only when he was right next to the light switch, and Izuku. I'm sorry, he muttered, just loud enough for Izuku to hear before shutting the door to the office behind him. Izuku turned back to the principal, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. You will accompany Class 1A tomorrow if you're feeling up to it. He didn't wait for Izuku to respond, instead grabbing a stack of papers from the desk. I'll be working all night, so feel free to stop by and chat. Izuku floated there for a while before shaking his head in disbelief, shutting his eyes. The ropes appeared like normal as he touched Eraserhead hesitantly. He did leave his analysis book in the attic. And Izuku, Nezu said before Izuku could pull the rope. Welcome to Your Hero Academia. Ooh, I love that. I love that being there. I love that little last line. Gosh, I do not understand how people can record and post daily, or in Echo case 3 times a day. My voice can barely get through one 20-minute video. Hats off to Echo. He's amazing, and we love him. Big inspiration for this channel, actually. That's really off course, but yeah, that's true. We love Echo. I really do not know how he does it. I mean, all that editing as well. It's ridiculous. Literally, like, how? Like, I can't even fathom it. Oh my goodness. Doing this 2 more times daily? No, I don't. Oof. Ooh, even thinking about it gives me like chills. Also, little note, I'm thinking of doing a Q&A at some point. It probably won't be for a while, but I'm thinking of doing one anyway, because I think it's fun. So any questions for that would be appreciated. It can be really any question. Maybe a few personal ones, like legal name and age. I might I might politely turn it down because I might not feel comfortable with that, but like any other questions, they don't have to be podfic related, but you can have them podfic related. I'm not picky, but yeah, so any questions for that would be appreciated. Again, it might not come out for ages, so don't try and kill me if it's not here immediately. I might do it for a year on my channel, which is sometime in June, maybe July, I think, since I posted my first one. I don't know, I'll have to check, but yeah. Any questions for that would be highly appreciated. Alrighty, my little Lunas, oh wait, there was a little bit of author's notes. This chapter, author's notes is, this chapter is a lot less action than others, but I felt it was important. It was, I love this chapter. Alrighty, my little learners, that's a wrap of this one. I love this chapter. It was amazing. The detective now properly knows, yay! Oh goodness. Again, I read this quite a while ago, so I can't remember all of it, so I do love, reading this again. Some bits are sad and they make me want to cry, but yeah. So ignore if my voice is cracking. I need to drink more water, I know I do, I'm probably dehydrated, but like... Alrighty, wait, what? So my little learners, this is a reminder that you might have something you need to do or check. I hope you have a fantastic time wherever and whenever you may be, day, night, dusk, dawn, low tide, high tide, whatever it is for you. You can call me Lovegood, and that was Chapter 9 of Ghostly Bonds by KittyKqt on AO3. Again, the link to this fic will be in the pinned comment by me on this video, and tags are in the description, as well as warnings. Really? As well as warnings. Bye, little learners. Oh shit, now my battery. Fuck. He was so selfish.